it looks like we've basically started, so I think we can start an informal discussion, and then maybe in a few minutes people might transfer over, and hopefully they will forgive my lack of competence in getting YouTube streaming to work.
I'll leave the chat for the old stream open so that I can monitor that and check that people aren't stuck there.
Yeah, that's good, thanks. Yeah, we've got a few questions, but just while we sort of start off, shall I say, Keris, do you want to introduce yourself? And I'll come to you, Laura, secondly. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Keris. I'm a first year student. I'm doing the Mathematics Bachelor with a placement year, and I've been on the chat, if you saw previously, answering some of your questions.
And Laura?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Laura. I'm a third year, so I've just completed my Mathematics BSc.
And you just got your results yesterday, didn't you? So
yeah.
Yeah. So we won't sort of probe you on what they are, but yeah, but well done anyway on finishing the degree. My name's Paul Levy. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admissions in Maths and Stats. And James?
I'm James, and I also work in Maths and Stats, and a very long time ago I did my PhD degree at Lancaster, and sort of never left.
Yeah, so a long time ago. I mean, these things get along very quickly, don't they? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And we've got a few questions that have come through in various kind of forums. So I suppose we could just sort of have a general discussion while we wait for people to hopefully kind of sort of click across to the new stream.
Is there any way that we could delete the old link just as a... Or is that a bit late now, just because I've got new people joining the old stream because it's the only one publicly visible?
Okay, currently. So let me just while I'm struggling with this, see if I can.
One of the questions that we had asked is why study maths at Lancaster. I was wondering whether, Laura, you wanted to talk a little bit about your experience and why you chose Lancaster originally, just while we're sorting some technical stuff.
Yeah. So I chose Lancaster originally actually more based on the campus itself. So I liked the idea of a campus university sort of contained in itself. I looked less at the actual department and more at the actual university. Because in my head I thought sort of a maths degree is a maths degree wherever it is. And then obviously when I came here, I found out we were actually like quite well up in the maths league tables, which was quite useful. But yeah, I've really enjoyed my time here. I think particularly the support in the maths department has been really good. I know comparatively to like other friends I have at different places, I think I've had a lot more support from the actual maths department and been able to go and just talk to anybody I want to a lot easier, which is something I definitely recommend at Lancaster.
And as I said, I'm a first year, so I just finished my first year here. And I definitely am really glad that I chose Lancaster. I also chose it more for the whole university rather than just the department. I knew before applying that Lancaster was really good for maths. It's part of my decision to go to the open day. I also really like the website. That was a big thing for me. A lot of the university websites were just really difficult to navigate, and it just put me right off. And so in terms of Lancaster, once I'd come to an open day, I really felt like it was a community-focused campus, and I definitely felt that through this year. Being in accommodation with people from different subjects is so enriching, and again, the support for maths is brilliant. You get an academic tutor who works with you throughout your degree, and mine is brilliant and very lovely.
Should I ask you who your academic tutor is?
Yes, so my academic tutor is David Paxello. He is the placement coordinator,
yes.
And so he's the academic tutor for all students on placement year programs, and he also he taught me on street maths, and so yeah, he's really lovely, and everyone who has him as a tutor is very lucky.
Yeah, I just got an email back from him today because we had a query about where exactly people who go on the placements, what kind of employers they would tend to work with. So I suppose that's relevant to you as well, because you're a placement year student, although you've not got as far as applying yet. But he said this year it was all finance. There was one cancellation of a placement this year out of 6 placements, and that cancellation was with Airbus. So that's the one that wasn't financial. So you can kind of see that the sort of manufacturing was affected by COVID more than kind of finance firms were. So so he was very quick to reply. So I can thank him on YouTube. It looks like we're getting a decent number of people sort of transferring over to this. So I'm going to leave the other one open, even though it kind of displays my incompetence to the world. But I'm going to leave it open just so that people can.
Is there a message
kind
on
of
the old
get the link?
I'm posting periodically to say, hey, we're not here.
So hopefully the second time we'll be able to get that right. So there were a few questions today on the live chat about minors. So do you want to just say something about the minors that you did, Karis and Laura? Just.
So I did my minor in management science. I'd say the minors coming into Lancaster, I was a bit uncertain about what it really was. And I didn't pick my minor until I was already here in Freshers Week. And I went to one of the talks that was in Freshers Week about different minors, and that's how I picked mine. So management science is basically like maths in business. It's sort of problem solving, that kind of thing, which is quite interesting, particularly if you're interested in like finance or business careers afterwards. But yeah, I thought that was really useful because it's nice to have your maths lectures and then go to something else that isn't just maths, especially in first year as you're sort of adjusting. And yeah, it was really useful.
And I took a minor in psychology. I was very close to choosing accounting and finance, but decided that I'd never taken psychology before. I wanted to do it at A-level, but my college didn't offer it. And it's something that has always sort of fascinated me. What I hadn't taken into account is how wordy it is. My entire grade is based on 2 coursework pieces now that my final exam was cancelled, and those were essays which I didn't know how to write. But I'm really glad that I did it. I think the minor is such a great way of exploring something different when it doesn't really matter. As long as you pass your minor, it doesn't affect your overall degree classification. And so it didn't matter that I couldn't really write essays. It was a real opportunity to explore scientific writing and researching. And I definitely think it's one of the things that made me pick Lancaster, the ability to sort of look at another subject so that it isn't just 24/7 maths.
Yeah, actually, I mean, psychology is one of the ones that it's no longer kind of guaranteed as an option, right? I don't know if anybody said that to you. So were there any timetable clashes, or did it work out okay anyway?
I didn't have any timetable clashes. Psychology was oversubscribed as a minor, and so there were some people who were in streaming locations, but this sort of changed as we went through the year as less people attended the sort of live lectures. But yeah, I think I just generally would encourage people to not just pick physics or accounting and finance because that's what most people do. Absolutely go for it if that's something that inspires you, but don't be afraid to take a chance on something a little bit different.
Yeah, we've got a few different sort of things that are kind of, you can do philosophy because we have a Maths with Philosophy degree. There's a new one going to be created for 2021, not for this coming year, but for 2021, which is in Chinese. So Chinese studies and maths is going to be a joint degree, but then you'll be able to do Chinese as a minor as well. So there's a lot of variety of things you can do in the minor, and yeah, it's sort of it gives you a broader range of skills, really, doesn't it? So should we move on to some of the questions people have been asking in the chat?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a recent one about does the department have an academic society? And I mentioned that we've got a society that recently rebranded itself as MathSoc. And I didn't know, Laura, if you got involved with that at all throughout your degree, whether you knew much about it.
Yeah, so I mainly used it in first year, so that was back when it was called Blue Maths. Yeah, it was a great, I think in going to lectures, it's quite hard to see this big group of hundreds of people and be like, make a friend in there. So I went to the first Blue Maths Society meeting, and then I made friends there because there was a lot less people. It was a lot easier to talk to people. And like, I'm still friends with those people now. It's a great way to have people to discuss maths with, especially because you're living with non-maths students. It's a good way to make friends that do maths. Yeah, and they offer the maths cafes and support, which was very useful in first year. But yeah, once I moved into second and third year, I didn't interact with Lou Maths as much anymore, so I'm not sure exactly how much has changed since then.
It is a student-run thing,
Yeah.
So each year they have slightly different ways of organising things according to what that year's kind of committee wants. But it's pretty active, pretty visible in the department.
Yeah.
I would say as well that the maths cafes that they ran, I found like really useful in first year, because it was easier to go and talk to those other students and ask for help on your sort of coursework and things, rather than going to a lecturer who seems a bit more intimidating.
Yeah.
And I think they still run those, so that was quite useful.
Yeah, they ran, so during this gone year there was maths cafes on a morning and on an evening, and so depending on what sort of person you were, you could go to one of those, whichever suited, and they often ran sessions the sort of day before an end of module test, which were massively helpful, and I know lots of my friends really appreciated those.
Just
organised talks as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do have visiting speakers. Yeah. But again,
we had a question about the difference between bachelors and masters. I was wondering if either of you had any thoughts on whether it's a significant choice in terms of employability.
So there's no need to think about it too hard at the moment, because you can if you come on one sort of degree, you can switch between the bachelors and the masters really throughout the first 2 and a bit years really. So what you pick on the UCAS form is really just it helps us to get an idea of where you're coming from. Bachelor's is 3 years, the master's is 4 years. I think it's quite likely you will be spending maybe 4 years doing mathematics and statistics, but whether you do that through a 4-year integrated degree or whether you do a 3-year bachelor's and then something else, like maybe a postgrad certificate of education, or maybe a separate master's in something like statistics or finance or some other sort of professional training, is something you probably won't decide until maybe you're middle of your second or third year. So the flexibility is important, but the admissions requirements for both types are the same. So it's really, don't think about it too much, but it is helpful for us to get an idea of who might be doing the 4th year in 3 or 4 years' time. But it's the title that matters really.
Yeah, there is a question. Sorry, just about computer science. So somebody's asked specifically about computer science. I guess that's sort of, it's not that different because you can also do the MSci
version.
But so they've asked whether BSc mathematics or MSci mathematics would be better. Now, I think I would probably advise somebody in those circumstances to enrol or to apply for computer science and mathematics, and then they would do the same amount of maths in the first year as a straight single major maths student, and they would have the option of either staying on the joint honours degree and doing half computer science from the second and third year, or of switching on to maths alone. But I think that would give you a bit more flexibility rather than doing computer science as a minor. That's just a sort of a technical little point, but yeah.
Equally, if you're wondering, should I do straight mathematics or financial mathematics, then one way of looking at it is if you do financial maths and then after a year you decide, well, actually I'd rather just do mathematics from the second year onwards, you can just switch.
Yeah, well, I can see, there is a question there just generally about Masters over BSc. Does it affect employers' decisions? Well, this is kind of partly recounted in the presentation on careers that I've got on the online Open Day website, where I don't think I specifically touched on it, but if you look at overall kind of careers outcomes throughout somebody's lifetime, solely based on earnings, which of course is like money. That is one measure of success, but there might be other things that you would want to look at. But doing a master's degree is correlated with higher earnings over a lifetime. So I think that overall you can say yes, master's degrees kind of tend to push you into those sort of more advanced professional positions than a straight bachelor's degree, but you might not notice it immediately at the sort of graduate level. You might not immediately after graduation notice that you're going into one of these better jobs. It could be something that happens a few years down the line. It may also depend on what subject you're studying. So it's the sort of thing that you can decide, as James says, during your studies. You can do a couple of years and then go, oh, you know what, I can't really, I don't really want to do a fourth year of study. It's just not for me. Or you can choose to come back to it later. There's various different options. I think the advantage for us is that flexibility.
Yeah, I would also add that originally I was on the MSc course. Because I was unsure whether or not I wanted to do 4 or 3 years, and it wasn't until about January this year that I actually decided to switch over to BSc,
Right.
and it was as simple as anything. I just went in, signed a form, and it was fine. So it is easy to change your mind if you want to.
Yeah, these days you can switch backwards and forwards. So it used to be a bit tricky to go from the BSc to the MSci, but that's not true anymore. So
yeah, because the funding is relatively straightforward.
Yeah.
You just effectively just tell them what you're doing, and they'll do the paperwork.
Well, that's clarification. That's for UK nationals. So
We're English nationals.
Yeah, no, of course. Right. Okay. We don't get very many applicants from Scotland. We get a couple, but yeah. So if you were an EU national, I think that. Yeah, who knows what's going to happen, but you might need a visa in future. So yeah. More questions? Should we?
We had a question about what kind of careers do Lancaster maths students move into, and I heard you saying you've done some sort of talk. I was wondering if they could find that online somewhere.
Yeah, I'll post a link in the chat once I can find the online open day page. Let me do that. Yeah, I'll post a link in the chat while we're talking, so people who are watching will notice I'm not really looking at the camera, but so I apologise for that.
And as a student ambassador, I went and did some parent talks where Paul did a section on careers, and it's really interesting, and there was lots of graphs. I'm not sure whether there are in the online version. But yeah, maths graduates really go into lots of roles. I know you're graduating this year, Laura. Did you want to mention a little bit about the sector you're going into?
Yeah, so I'm going into the supply chain sector specifically. I'm on a finance grad scheme, as long as it all goes ahead with COVID. So yeah, I'll be doing a 3-year course with DHL, doing a different area of finance each year, alternating through that. So I do my 3 years and then I'll be qualified. I'll be able to go into whichever specific sector of finance I want to go into.
I know that lots of maths graduates go into stuff like teaching or further study, or I know finance is quite a big one. But I'm sure that
statistics is very big, and we have a sort of dedicated masters in statistics, but we get so if many of you watching might not be particularly enamoured of statistics, in general our statistics section see it as their mission to convince you of its importance, and we get several dozen each year, often going off into particularly medical and pharmaceutical statistics. It's a big thing for us, not just at teaching but also at research level.
We had a question from a student asking specifically about specialisms in mathematical biology or epidemiology. I know you can't make any promises, but I was wondering if you know anything about that. I don't know.
We have 4th-year courses in both of those things. So, yeah, certainly if someone were to come here and were to be interested in specialising in that type of statistics, then this is a good example of either the 4-year integrated system or switching to a master's, separate masters for the 4th year, you could certainly do both of those things. They are areas of strength for Lancaster, so the people teaching them are generally very experienced at that.
We just had a great question about compulsory coursework elements. I was wondering if one of you two sort of staff members wanted to talk about the assessment that happens at Lancaster across the years.
So I've just found I've posted a link to the careers talk, which lists, and it backs up what you were just saying about range of different careers. So the latest statistics on where Lancaster graduates go are it includes a kind of a cross section of a little bit of teaching, a little bit of quite a lot of further study actually. So from the undergraduate point of view, we don't necessarily see what careers people go on to because they might do a postgraduate degree first, and then quite a few sort of financy kind of marketing where you're doing the sort of statistics side of things. There's some government statisticians and so on.
Data science is big.
Yeah, data science is a typical one. Anyway, sorry, Keris, I didn't. What was your question again?
We had someone asking about compulsory coursework elements, and I was just wondering if you could give a brief overview of, first year, second year, third year, how that progresses over the course.
So shall I answer, James, or I mean you just studied the first year, Keris.
So roughly what happens is in the first year, assuming COVID generally get back to a normal situation. First year, the idea is 50% of your credit is on your exam and 50% is on the coursework you do throughout the year, and that's a mixture of kind of very regular homeworks, tests, some online multiple choice things, and some stuff in labs, and some dedicated problem solving sessions. There's quite a lot of opportunities to get some marks basically, and that all tops up to half of your final mark for the first year, and then half of your mark is in the end of year exam. And then in the second year, the basic idea is the further up you go, the exams become worth slightly more. So in the second year, I think it's 80-85% is generally on the exam, and then all the work you're doing over the year is counts for about 15-20%, and in the third year it's similar. One of the second year modules is all coursework, and that's our project skills module, where you do a group project, you learn about presentation skills, you give a presentation, and you learn about scientific writing, and you actually write a little project yourself. So that's all decided 100% before the exams happen.
Yeah. There are a few projects later on as well.
Sorry.
Go on.
We had a question from Ellen asking about how tutors are designated. And I know as a placement year student, all the placement year students have the same tutor, but I'm not sure about whether there's a system or if it's just randomised for...
It's not randomised, there's an element of it. So yes, if you are on the year abroad scheme, your academic tutor will usually be your study abroad tutor. And also we try and group together some of the joint degrees. So for example, almost all my academic tutees are doing accounting, finance and maths, and that helps them because all of them can talk and basically just liaise with me. It helps me because it's like one degree I really need to get to know, but for those doing straight maths or straight maths and stats, it's mostly random. But and I think most academic staff who have tutees will have sort of between 10 and 15 in each year of academic tutees. So
that's the academic tutees. So there are also, we talk about workshop tutors, which is a different thing. That would be for the people who mark the work that you hand in and sit in your workshop. So that's different, and both of those things are sort of mostly random, but you may find that certain groups in certain courses are together for whatever reason. So yeah.
And the ratio there for workshop tutees is 1 to 15.
Well, we can't. Yeah, so we've been advised not to promise anything. It is around about 1 to 15, but depending on if there's a sudden rush, if we double the number of students, then we might not have enough workshop tutors to cover that. So, yeah. Shall we answer some of the questions that were asked earlier, Keris, that you posted
I
on Skype?
I asked you a couple of them already.
Right.
But we definitely go into a few in a bit more detail. One of the questions asked was about taking 4 A levels, and I think also generally often people are sort of thinking about EPQs or perhaps non-typical subjects that you might take alongside an A level and how that affects the offers given and stuff like that.
So 4 A levels. So roughly speaking, that kind of. It doesn't sort of affect the offer in terms of the offer we will still give you. It will be 3 A's or 2 A's and a B if one of those A levels is further maths. Ignoring any change to the offer if you take the test of mathematics or anything like that. But it would give you a second chance. If you had maths, further maths, physics and chemistry, for example, then you sort of get 2 chances depending on the physics and the chemistry for your AAB. So if you got an A in maths and further maths, then all you would need to do would be to get a B in either physics or chemistry, and that satisfies the offer. But it doesn't change the kind of the statement of the offer that we give you. So hopefully that's relatively clear. Yeah.
We just had a question that I missed a little bit earlier about switching between joint honours and single honours degrees and whether you can move to a joint honours having applied with a single honours.
Yes.
Yes, sometimes. It's not a very helpful answer. So if you come in on sometimes it's usually it's usually straightforward to go from a combined degree to, for example, straight mathematics for most choices. So for maths and philosophy, computer science and maths, and financial maths, for example, if you're on those, then if after 1 year you decide to go straight back to mathematics, that's generally okay. Moving on to
the question, James, was in the reverse actually.
Yeah,
so
in the reverse, it can be more difficult because, of course, you would usually need to have taken that other subject as a line subject in your first year.
So I think the question is if you've done the same subject matter in your first year as any student who was on that combined major degree, then in principle it should be straightforward to switch to the combined major. So you need to pick your minor quite well. If you're thinking you might want to switch to a combined major, and you've got a year essentially to make up your mind. And there's one exception, which would be the computer science and maths, where if you think you might want to do computer science and maths, we would encourage you to apply for computer science and maths, and it would be much easier to switch in the opposite direction than to switch on to computer science and maths. So so that's I think answering in that direction. I mean, once you get past the first year, it's you're more or less sort of fixed, apart from switching between mathematics or mathematics with statistics, or between the BSc or the MSci. Yeah.
I believe we're pretty much caught up on current questions, but I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about the support available, especially considering students feeling a little bit uncertain after this abrupt end to teaching, and just sort of generally from, academically what's offered and just general. I know this is something that I about when I went to Open Days, and I figured it's a good chance to talk about it rather than just me typing.
Mm-hmm. The support available. I mean, there's a range of different things, aren't there? I mean, one of the most important sources of support is the LUMAS, the Maths Cafe that you referred to, and we like to, offer the staff time, but we are aware that there are a lot of students who might be just too shy or they may feel until they've got a kind of a perfectly formulated question, they don't necessarily want to go along and talk to a lecturer and say, can you help me with X? They might feel like the lecturer, there's various reasons why they might not want to do that. So we do try and be friendly and open, and to have the maximum sort of number of opportunities to ask for that sort of advice. That's support where you're actually talking about directly in terms of the studies that you're doing and answering the work as it's required, and keeping up with the course. You talked about the academic tutors. I think that's pretty highly valued by most students. Not all students. I've had academic tutees, and I invited them, and they said, I don't have anything to talk about. So, sometimes they feel not perfectly happy, but it's quite a good way of kind of, maybe starting conversations, for example, around careers and stuff. Starting conversations with tutees, and then sort of really having a face in the department that they can go and talk to. The Maths Cafe, the academic tutors. We mentioned the Director of Studies, which are sort of people that students won't necessarily see directly, but they're more sort of concerned with if things start to go wrong with a student, or if there's something kind of some sign that a student is maybe not engaging with their studies enough, then the Director of Studies would play a role in that. They might sort of contact them and say, oh, we've noticed you haven't been to workshops for a couple of weeks, can you, and it can be a little bit sort of like you ought to be attending workshops, but it is supposed to be supportive as well. Academic tutors, Directors of Studies, lecturers' office hours.
It's a teaching team.
Yeah.
So for most sort of admin-related problems, like I want to do this and I don't know how to do it, we've got a group of, I don't think how many of them there are at the moment, there's about 4 or 5 of them, and there's this one email address, and that one of them will get back to you very, very soon. So if it's simply a question of I'm stuck because I can't do this, or I don't know how to do this, we've got dedicated staff who are there to help.
Yeah.
I also found as well that with the academic tutors, it was quite useful that if you had a question and you weren't sure who to ask it to, you could go to I quite often went to my tutor and would say, this is my issue, and then he would point me in the direction of who could help me. Even if it wasn't directly a maths related question, he would still always try and help me figure out who was the best person to send me to, which was really useful.
Brilliant. I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about personal statements. I had a specific question from a student who is hoping to apply for a joint maths and computer science degree, but mentions mostly maths. But also I think personal statements are a big worry for a lot of people, and so if you had any thoughts about that in general for people applying this autumn.
I will come in. So they're important, but remember, when we try and rank in your application in order of preference, there's your academic record, that's your existing grades, and also your predicted grades. Then there's your reference. So a lot of you remember that. So we also get a reference from either somebody at your college generally, and then the next most important thing usually is the personal statement. So while it's important, I wouldn't over stress yourself about it. What we're really looking for is, are you enthusiastic about mathematics? Or if you're applying for maths and computer science, in maths and computer science. If we see the enthusiasm's there, that's generally sufficient. The one thing I would say is that if there is some difference in the sense of, say you had an interrupted education, or you did say non-standard qualifications, or there's something that you think we ought to consider when we consider your application, mention it in the personal statement. So if you had disruption due to moving or similar, mention something like that in the personal statement. But generally, work at it, but don't over stress about it.
Or disruption in year 12 because of lost study.
Well,
so there's...
obviously we know that there's been something going on for a lot of us. But if you have particular disruption, If you had difficulty, maintaining education, then do mention it. Don't don't mention it too much. But we don't assume we know. So this is your opportunity to speak to us.
Yeah, I mean, if there was some sort of particular circumstances that affected your GCSE grades, for example, then that might be something to mention in the personal statement.
If you ended up, if you only got, say, a 3 or a 4 at GCSE because there was some catastrophic reason, then just mention why.
And I think, I mean, James, you'll know more than me, but this might be a good point to sort of address one of the questions, which is about, which came in earlier, which was about not having the A-level course affected by the lockdown and so on, and asking whether there's help once they arrive. But there's a separate question there, which is perhaps around contextual offers. Now, we have got nothing certain to say about that at the moment, do we? But there is some discussion around contextual offers for people in different circumstances, and I would have thought that the COVID situation, especially if if you've got there are reasons why you couldn't catch up on your studies in the way that some other students might have been able to do, and that would have been something to bear in mind. Now, James could be able to tell me whether the personal statement would be the sort of place that you would mention something like that.
I think if it's significantly worse than, say, I mean, everyone's obviously had big problems adjusting and so on, but if what happened, say, at your school, say that your maths teacher fell ill or something, which has happened in some places, then do mention it. In terms of adjustments, we don't really know. There's this rumour that A-levels next year might be delayed by a few weeks to kind of allow people to catch up. So maybe the A-level exams next year might run sort of June till July rather than May to June. We'll see if that happens. We're still very much waiting to see what happens. But yes, certainly, I think disproportionate levels of effect is what matters. I mean, everyone's had difficulty, but some people will have had more problems than others.
Yeah, and I think in terms of whether there's anything that we do once students arrive to address, students who maybe don't feel completely secure in the A-level content and how much they've studied, whether they fell a little bit behind at that stage. Well, this gets back to the whole issue about support and making sure that there are sort of avenues for people to go and ask for advice. There's kind of informal and slightly more formal kind of routes for that, aren't there? There are kind of study support plans and so on. And I mean, there's nothing specific about that we have connected with the loss of school time because of COVID, but there are a range of different kind of support kind of avenues where you can get advice and so on and get some help. And I think that also taps into maybe sometimes we get questions from people who haven't studied further maths A-level, and so it's a sort of a similar situation really where some of our students have, and I think both of you two did study A-level further maths, didn't you, Keris and Laura? But that not by no means all of our students have done A-level further maths, and there's this sort of sometimes we find students who kind of panic a bit because they say, "Oh no, everybody's done further maths, and I've got here, and I'm kind of, I'm therefore at a disadvantage." But in fact, it doesn't work like that. The structure is such that you might need to do a bit more work once you arrive, because obviously you've not studied as much maths at school, but the opportunities are there for you to pick stuff up once you get here. And I think you said, Keris, that you were involved with maybe sort of helping some of the people who'd not done further maths A-level. There was a
lot of people in my building who, especially people who took maths as a minor subject, which was quite popular in my year, who felt really lacking in their maths knowledge. And actually, there's so much support academically, especially with the Maths Society and other friendly maths students, that they, by the end of the year, had done really well.
We've got a couple of questions on the...
Yes, we had a fairly specific question asking about financial maths and asking about the difference in career prospects when you're looking at doing a maths degree or a financial maths degree.
I would say, so I think if you know clearly that if you want to go into finance, insurance, banking, clearly financial maths is a very good degree to do. We do also get many people going into finance who've just done maths or maths with statistics, though. Finance and insurance are often things where some graduate recruiters like to take people with bachelor's degrees and then train them up. Some prefer people with sort of master's degrees, and some people would therefore go from a bachelor's in one subject to a master's in finance or similar. Certainly if you know you're either like finance or you're looking into that, then doing a combined degree gives you the chance to learn about kind of financial markets earlier, basically. But if you don't do that, then you can still catch up, and potentially at master's or professional training years you can learn about those things.
And we had a similar question about the difference between maths and stats and maths and the amount of statistics in each.
So the difference there is that maths with stats, by doing that degree, you are certifying I'm going to do a certain amount of stats. Whereas with a maths degree, the amount of stats isn't prescribed, but it can be any level. The reason for that is to do with accreditation. So we say our degrees are great, but obviously that may not be quite enough for everyone. So we have professional bodies who go around and accredit degrees. And all our maths degrees are accredited by the Institute of Maths and its Applications, which does what the name suggests. But our maths with stats degrees are also accredited by the Royal Statistical Society, and their badge says that these degrees contain all the stats we think you should be studying. So doing maths with stats gets that extra accreditation, but slightly less freedom. Effectively, you have to do a certain amount of stats, so you have the choice.
I mean, the only difference for us is in year 3 and maybe year 4 if you're doing the MSci as well. So the first 2 years are the same actually, and that's one reason why it's very easy to switch between them. So, yeah.
Brilliant. We had a question about extra papers. So I'm thinking this is referring to stuff like STEP or MATS or TMUA, and asking whether Lancaster takes any of these in a return for a reduction of offers.
Yes, we recognise TMUA, which is the test of mathematics for university admission, which is sat in November this year. So if you sit that, and you don't have to declare your result for that. That's one thing that's quite good. So anyone can sit it. If you do very badly, let's just pretend it didn't happen. We'll never know. But if you do declare your result to us, and generally, certainly this last year, if you've had a score of more than 4.5, you get scored out of 9, then we will cut your offer by 1 grade, basically. And the other extra exam we explicitly recognise is STEP, and that's sat in June alongside your A-levels. So that will be a thing whereby if you haven't declared TMUA, but if you generally all our offers have an alternative offer which is 1 grade below plus a pass at STEP. So say if you've done further maths, then the usual offer would be AAB, but alternatively ABB plus a pass at STEP.
Yeah, but we don't require.
You don't.
We don't require them
I mean,
to do
generally about maybe about 100 of our intake will have done one or other of these papers, but that means that slightly more than half haven't. I mean, if it's entirely up to you. We'd like to think it's giving you an extra chance, basically. But if you just basically want to focus on your A-levels, good, fine.
Yeah, I mean, we think that TMUA is probably the more accessible one if you don't have sort of bespoke school support. Even then, it's perhaps you're at a bit of a disadvantage compared to people who've got the schools have got specific kind of classes on TMUA. But that's one which is probably worth doing, even if you don't have, or just trying out. Go and look at the website, try some past papers. Even if you don't have any sort of school support in the sort of extra maths, it's good because it's extra experience in maths, and it's kind of a bit of a bridge between A-level maths and the kind of maths that you would have to learn at university. I think that's so did either of you Keris and Laura, did you do Tamua or?
I didn't do either of them.
No, neither did I.
Either of them, right? Okay, so yeah, so it's a subset. We've not managed to find anybody, but yeah.
We get the one thing I'd say is that, as I say, if you do, apart from the time you spend preparing, which is actually quite, arguably good practice in maths, there's no real harm. There's literally no harm in doing Tamua, apart from spending a morning doing a maths test. And if you do well, then, as I say, not just us, but lots of other unis recognise it.
Yeah, and so I mean, officially the Tamua is due to go ahead on 4th of November.
Yes, I checked. I mean, yes, because unless a sort of second wave happens and effectively the schools get cleared again, it's a test you sit in schools, so it should be feasible. And also bear in mind that the time of Tamua is also when people who weren't able to do their A-levels, who opted to sit as there will be a November series of exams for people who couldn't get a grade this summer, so it's quite important to the government that some exams happen this November. So I think I'd be quite confident that Tamua will happen, unless, as I say, the world goes back to being very bad.
Yeah, well, hopefully not. Yeah, hopefully not for all kinds of reasons. But anyway, we've got a question about dyslexia. Is the impact of dyslexia on a student's secondary education potentially something that could be seen as contextual? James will know more than me about that.
If there are, so the thing about, certainly it's worth, if you come here to Lancaster, then we will put in a individual support and learning plan. That's for any, not just dyslexia, but any sort of thing that needs adjustment. In terms of getting here, well, often there'll be adjustments made at school, and often you will get extra time in your exams if you have, say, dyslexia. So the default thing would be that as long as reasonable adjustments have been made, you in exams, then we wouldn't put any extra changes into your offer, because hopefully what's happening with like extra time and stuff in your school or college will make it a level playing field. But again, if you think that sort of provision wasn't put in, or there's some sort of problem, then we would consider it, as a context. But hopefully, there will be reasonable adjustments made, so we can treat you as should be the case, equally to everyone else.
Do you mind if I talk quickly about the disability service?
Yes, I know.
So I applied to have an individual learning support plan in place when I first applied for Lancaster and got an offer. Essentially, when I filled it in, there was like a Google Forms thing, and then you had to email in a little bit of like evidence, whether that's from school or a GP or something, and it really isn't as scary as it sounds. And then when I arrived at Lancaster, I already had a pre-written plan ready in writing with all the adjustments that were expected of the department and my lecturers and of myself, and it's a completely comprehensive way of helping people. I was astounded when I was filling in the form at how comprehensive it is and kind, really, and the whole disability service is fantastic. There's so much study support available, as well as emotional pastoral support and career support. I've been engaging with some fantastic programs run by that service over the summer, even while we've been at home. And I would really encourage anyone with anything, whether it's dyslexia or something really complex or mental health problems, to have a look at that part of the Lancaster University website and really consider just sending an application in, because the worst that happens is really they could say, no, you don't quite qualify for this service, whereas actually I found them to be such a helpful foundation for my first year in helping me get settled and stay settled.
Good. Well, it's good to hear. Yeah, I mean, it's become I think a lot more systematic over the last few years in terms of what's been expected of us as staff. I mean, still sometimes it's not 100% clear what we're being asked to do, but we do receive the forms. You know, you have to have some discussion as to, you know, what does this form exactly mean? When does this apply? When does this not apply? But there are, you know, summaries for all teaching staff as to what, you know, what responsibilities you have, and any changes are always marked out in red and so on. So it's quite an effective communication system. Yeah, and I think that probably hopefully it's more of a worry for us as staff than it is for students, because it's apart from anything, it's peace of mind that you know that this thing's been taken care of. And I think sometimes as staff we see this and think, oh my God, should I be doing more? Or, you know, have I definitely satisfied this requirement here? And it's taken less interpretation than it did sort of 2 or 3 years ago. So the system's improved, I would have said. Yeah.
So we're all caught up on questions from the chat. I don't know whether anyone wants to talk about something. I've asked whether we've got any last questions, so we might get some in a bit. But
I feel like we've been leaving Laura out of it. So your experience as a graduating student, what made you change to the BSc? What was your motivation for not continuing your studies?
Well, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do another year of studying, and then I got a grad scheme offer in December, so I thought, now I've got this grad scheme offer, I'd rather take that than stay here for another year. So I mainly chose to leave because I had this offer for a job, which I thought was better for me rather than staying here and doing another year of studying that I wasn't certain I wanted to do.
So did you decide that before COVID, or?
Yeah.
And then it's okay, right? I mean, I think you said it's still, the grad scheme is still going ahead. You've got no, you know, there's no worries on that score.
As far as I know, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still a bit uncertain.
I think that, yeah, generally that if you're in, obviously it's not in catering or anything like that, so, or hospitality, then, you know, there are areas like finance and so on seem to be doing okay. I don't know what it is, but yeah, certain areas of the economy seem to be going okay and others aren't. But yeah. So and yours was it mathematics, or mathematics was statistics?
Straight mathematics.
Right. So you did.
Yeah,
I think you said you. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So I wasn't a big fan of statistics, so I went down the pure maths route in third year. I did one statistics module in my last year, but the rest of it was all pure maths because I just prefer pure maths.
Right. Is it more algebra or analysis? Which are the?
Algebra.
Algebra, yeah. So it's a bit of a sort of variety, but yeah, we do find that there's a bit of a split come the third year. So did you have any friends that you just never saw in sort of the same classes anymore, or?
Yeah. I had quite a few friends who were very statistics, and they were gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's quite a lot of sort of further study options on the stats side as well. You know, people might sort of stay on and they could do the MSci or stay on and do the MSc in data science or something like that. So it's kind of yeah. So there's different routes, but I think that the pure maths and then getting a job is like one of the big chunks of our sort of student cohort. That seems to be sort of reasonably popular. Is there anything else to add?
I have questions that I remember asking when I went to an open day. I was wondering actually whether we had quite a lot of questions earlier about applied maths, whether you wanted to talk about that a little bit, because I was a little bit brief when I talked about it earlier.
Well, so applied maths, obviously at school tends to mean either basically not pure maths, so mechanics, statistics, and what's sometimes called discrete, sometimes called decision. And obviously we in our department, our big specialisms are pure maths and probability and statistics. But we do Lancaster University does do mechanics, which is what at university we tend to just call applied maths. A lot of that is actually in the physics department. So there are people who specialise in mechanics, dynamics and so on. but they're mostly in physics, and we sort of reflect that in our degrees. So the courses that do specialise in mechanics tend to be in physics, but we have a solution because of our minor system. If you do want to keep going with the mechanics, then pick physics as your minor in the first year, basically. Similarly, the applied maths that you might call discrete decision, that really is what management science is, and you can do a minor in that in your first year as well. So, and if you really get into it, you can do the combined degrees, that's called Morse and theoretical physics and maths. So it is possible to do all those things, but the ones that a straight maths or maths with stats student would do would be in either pure maths or probability statistics.
I'm just posting, I mean, I think there's a sort of notion of applied maths as being like mechanics, but we have lots of other sort of things which are applications of maths, or they're, sort of broad area of applied maths, but they might not be the sort of applied maths that you've done at A level. That's really the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, data science, of course, is a big application of maths, and we have one of the biggest Masters courses in that in the country here, and many of our undergrads go on to that.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've probably answered most of the questions that have been asked today. I don't think there's anything that we've missed. We might have done, and if we have, then I apologise. But I've now posted the email address that you can contact us on. If you've got any more questions, or if you like, if you think of something later on, then please get in touch with us at that email address. I think we'll wrap up.
Brochure is on the website.
All of the information on that you can still view on the online Open Day website. You can find a copy of the undergraduate brochure. You can view the talks, one about careers, one which is introduction to the department, and you can see the individual courses with the modules, which are 99% correct. I did spot one or two mistakes on that, a bit frustratingly, but they're, at least for the first 2 years, they should be correct. So thanks to everybody for tuning in, and I think we'll wrap the stream up. And thanks to Keris and Laura and James for helping out today. And so we'll see everybody at a later date, hopefully. Okay. Right, thanks. Bye. End stream.